Hello, dear friends. Welcome to Crime Story Diaries. Today we'll be examining a terrifying case, so I invite you to watch the video. Don't forget to leave your comments and likes. This shocking story took place in April 2013 in the town of Brentwood, Tennessee, USA. Brentwood is an elite suburb located approximately 20 minutes drive from Nashville. It is one of the wealthiest communities not only in the state, but in all of America. The town is in the top 20 most affluent cities in the USA. Brentwood is renowned for its picturesque landscapes and high standard of living. It has a population of around 40,000 people. The average income of residents is much higher than the national average. Brentwood is considered one of the safest cities in America. Since its founding in 1969, there have been only 8 murders here. The crime rate in Brentwood is 74% lower than the US average. The reliability and security of life here is also evidenced by the fact that the town is partially located in Williamson County, the 16th wealthiest county in the USA. In addition to its luxurious scenery, Brentwood attracts celebrities and the wealthy with its developed infrastructure. There are over 10 parks, plenty of upscale stores and restaurants, and a world-class private golf club. And most importantly, the bustling Nashville is only a 20-minute drive away. Movie stars, musicians, and athletes often buy real estate in Brentwood. Among the famous residents are Taylor Swift, Nicole Kidman, and Keith Urban, Jack White, Mike Fisher, and Carrie Underwood. Successful business people, politicians, and top managers of large companies who have offices in the city's business district also settle here. In a word, Brentwood is the ideal place for those who want to live beautifully, safely, and at the same time, in seclusion. But despite all its elitism, status, and well-being, even Brentwood is not immune to bloody dramas and tragedies. One of the most terrible occurred in April 2013 in the mansion of the Maidens couple. The Maidens couple's mansion was located in the very heart of the so-called Governor's Club. This is a gated cottage community, one of the most expensive and prestigious areas of Brentwood. The elite neighborhood occupies an area of 600 acres around a private golf club designed by the famous golfer Arnold Palmer. Only residents and their guests can access the territory. The home of Rachael and Randy Maidens was a true embodiment of a dream, a luxurious 500-square-meter mansion worth about $1 million. It seemed like the perfect place for a happy family life and career. No one could have imagined that a bloody drama would unfold within these walls. Dr. Rachael Maidens was an extremely successful and vivid personality. This 34-year-old blonde had an attractive appearance, a sharp mind, and many talents. She was a brilliant orthodontist with her own private practice located in Brentwood's business district of Maryland Farms. Rachael sincerely adored her 2-year-old daughter, Natalie. Rachael had an elite education. She graduated from the prestigious Father Ryan Catholic School in Nashville, then the academically renowned Birmingham Southern College in Alabama. During her studies, she was a star of the tennis team, receiving the highest athletic and academic awards. She earned a bachelor's degree with magna cum laude honors in biology and psychology. She was awarded one of the most prestigious Dinaheiser scholarships. Rachael then went on to the University of Florida Dental School. Here, too, she proved herself brilliantly. She was the class president, recognized for her leadership qualities and active community work. After obtaining a Doctor of Dental Surgery degree, she completed her orthodontics residency at the Children's National Medical Center in Washington, D.C. Despite her young age, Rachael reached incredible heights in her career. She opened her own clinic, published articles in professional journals, and was a popular speaker at conferences. The list of her achievements was impressive. At the same time, at the start of her independent life, the girl experienced a terrible family tragedy. On December 3, 2003, when Rachael was still a student, a tragedy occurred that forever changed the life of her family. The girl's father, Dr. Richard, who was a respected pharmacist, was arrested by federal agents. He was accused of selling the painkiller OxyContin to an informant from the Drug Enforcement Administration. In addition, Richard was allegedly engaged in the illegal sale of prescription drugs right out of his home. However, the case never went to trial. Just 2 days after his arrest, Rachel's father took his own life. He could not bear the burden of shame and fear of justice. But the nightmare for the Frisbee family did not end there. The Nashville police froze the bank accounts not only of Richard, but also of Rachael, her mother, and her brother. They all found themselves involved in the investigation of the head of the family's crimes. The investigation lasted for years, and as a result, Rachael and her relatives were found innocent, but they suffered financially. The girl's mother received $15,000 in compensation from the police, but this could hardly heal the emotional wounds. One can only guess what emotional scars this story left on Rachel's soul. However, the girl did not allow the family tragedy to ruin her life. She continued her studies, brilliantly graduated from university, and obtained a profession. Apparently, Rachael was deeply motivated to become the best, achieve success, and secure financial independence for herself. Perhaps a defense mechanism worked, the desire to protect herself and her future family, to no longer depend on anyone. Rachael survived the terrible loss of a loved one and nearly found herself on the verge of bankruptcy. But she managed to pull herself together and radically change her life. And she succeeded. Unfortunately, not for long. She had no idea that she had married a man who wanted her dead. Randolph Carey Maidens was born into the family of Charles and Barbara Maidens in St. Louis, Missouri. He spent most of his childhood in Georgia, where he graduated from Wheeler High School in Marietta. He then received higher education at the prestigious Georgia Tech College. At the time of his marriage to Rachael, Randy held the position of sales manager at a pharmaceutical company based in Brentwood. This biotech firm specialized primarily in oncology research. However, according to rumors, by the time of his wife's murder, Randy was no longer working there. There is no official confirmation of this information, as the company's management reacted very painfully to the actions of their employee and refused to give any comments. But this version seems plausible given Randy's strange behavior in the months leading up to the tragedy. Approximately 3 months before Rachel's murder, Randy Maidens underwent striking and alarming changes in his behavior. The man was rapidly slipping into alcoholism and likely abusing drugs as well. In January, restaurant patrons noticed Randy, wildly drunk, bursting into the establishment. His appearance frightened the guests and staff. One of the employees called the police. She reported that she did not dare to serve the troublemaker, but was also afraid to let him go in such a state. The 911 dispatcher sent patrol officers to the address, but before they could arrive, the waitress called back, even more frightened. According to her, when the drunk man got up, some things fell out of his pocket. Among them, the girl noticed a shotgun shell and a large bottle that looked like Tylenol. The visitor tried to escape, but the employee of the establishment managed to persuade him to wait. The cops did arrive and searched Randy's car. They found a shotgun in the cabin. Despite this, they did not detain Maidens. Witnesses say his wife came to pick him up. Interestingly, Randy asked the waitress several times not to call Rachael because she would be angry. He considered himself a victim of marital wrath, although it seems more likely that his wife had every reason to be offended by her husband. Of course, this is just an assumption. It's hard to judge someone else's marriage. But it appears Rachael knew well who she was dealing with. Be that as it may, a wealthy man who, drunk and armed, caused a disturbance in a public place was released by the police on his word of honor. They didn't even try to hold him accountable. They let him call his wife to take him home. Think about that. On April 21st, 2013, Rachel's mother, Betty Frisbee, called the Brentwood police. The woman asked law enforcement officers to urgently visit her daughter's home. She said her son-in-law was on the verge of suicide. According to other reports, Betty gave Randy an ultimatum. If he did not put Rachael on the phone within 10 minutes, she would call the cops. What exactly alarmed the woman is not known for certain, but it seems that Randy did call his mother-in-law after murdering his wife. It's terrifying to imagine what he must have said to Betty if she called the police. In any case, within a few minutes of Betty's call, patrol officers were already at the Maidens' mansion. No one answered the knocking at the door. The law enforcement officers noticed that all the curtains in the house were drawn, so it was impossible to look inside. Fortunately, The garage door turned out to be open. The officers were able to enter the house and began calling the owners by name. Neither Randy nor Rachael responded. Suddenly, the cops heard a child crying. On the second floor in a crib lay a tearful 2-year-old Natalie. One of the officers, Austin Kern, went upstairs and looked over the balcony railing into the great hall, and he saw blood splatters on the walls and a shotgun lying on the couch. Rachael's body was found on the first floor, in the hallway between the living room and the foyer leading to the master bedroom. The woman showed no signs of life. She was shot in the back. 8 bullets were fired from a 9mm pistol and 2 more from a shotgun. Inspection of the crime scene showed that someone had tried to wipe the blood from the walls and floor, and they even used bleach for this. Its smell was clearly felt. However, the terrible crimson streaks were still ominously visible. Randy was not in the house. An intensive search began for him, involving special forces and helicopters. That night, Brentwood's elite neighborhood resembled the set of a Hollywood action movie. Both the local police and the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation took up the case. Law enforcement officers immediately assumed that Randy might be armed, and given his strange behavior recently, extremely dangerous as well. At a press briefing, Brentwood Police Chief Jeff Hughes characterized Maidens as unstable. In the very first hours of the investigation, some important details came to light that shed light on what happened, and most importantly, indicated the possible motives of the killer. On the kitchen table of the mansion, police found a suicide note. In it, Randy verbosely apologized to his daughter. He assured her of his love, but admitted that he was forced to flee because of a terrible act, although he did not specify which one. The man thanked his wife's relatives for the years spent with them. At the same time, he complained about Rachael's impossible character. He claimed that he had not become her third husband for nothing, as the previous 2 had allegedly not endured it either. Randy wrote that for the last 6 years, he had endured daily humiliation from Rachael. She supposedly constantly yelled at him, quarreled over the smallest reason, and belittled him. And this last scandal was the last straw for him, but there was not a single word about suicide in the note. On the contrary, Randy expressed a desire to take his daughter and care for her in the future, albeit not without the help of Rachael's relatives. And one more telling fact. In the trunk of Randy's car, about $87,000 in cash were found. A solid sum of money was carelessly stuffed into a large bag. In addition, over $9,000 were found in the house. It seems that Randy planned to kill his wife and run away to start a new life. He had time to pack. At least a few hours had passed since the massacre of Rachael. Why then did he not leave? Because he could have escaped the pursuit. What prevented him? Telephone records showed that on the evening of the murder, Randy called his lawyer. It was one of Nashville's most experienced criminal law professionals, named David Rabin. What they talked about is not known for certain. However, a call to a lawyer in such a situation makes one wonder. Randy could have gone far. However, for some reason he decided to hide in the woods behind his house, perhaps due to haste or panic. And there he sat for 12 hours until he finally emerged from the green thicket with his hands up and surrendered to the police. Meanwhile, a thorough search of the elite neighborhood and interrogation of neighbors continued. Several residents reported that in the morning, after the murder, they noticed traces of attempts to break into their homes. Someone tried to open garage and regular doors, looking for shelter. The police checked the CCTV footage and confirmed it. It was Randy who was wandering around the neighborhood, knocking on neighbors' homes. What exactly he had in mind remained a mystery, but no one would dare to hide an unstable, potentially armed man who had just brutally murdered his wife. To put it mildly, the residents of the quarter were not happy about such a prospect. After his arrest, Randy was officially charged with first-degree murder, child neglect, and tampering with evidence. Under Tennessee law, he faced execution, or at least life imprisonment. Initially, the man was held in custody with a bail amount of $2.5 million. The suspect's lawyers immediately began to petition for a mitigation of the preventive measure, and they succeeded. In June 2013, the bail amount was reduced from $2.5 million to $750,000. Rabin convinced the judge that if Randy had really planned to escape, he would have done so long ago. After all, he had plenty of time to hide between the murder and the arrival of the police. But instead, he stayed to face justice. Moreover, no documents, tickets, or cards were found in his car that would indicate plans to leave the city. The new court decision allowed Randy to go free on bail. Where he lived and what he did before the trial, which was scheduled to begin in September 2014, is unknown. But Randy was unable to sit quietly all those months. In December 2013, he was arrested again for trespassing and knocking on apartment doors in a residential complex in Bellevue, another Nashville suburb. Avery Park, one of the apartment building residents, described the behavior of the uninvited guest as extremely strange. According to Park, Randy was posing as a police officer and demanding to be let in. The cops were called, and they found Randy completely drunk. But even despite this, even though he was out on bail awaiting trial on a first-degree murder charge, he was only charged with public intoxication, and the next day, he was released on bail. This time, prosecutor Kim Helper managed to revoke Randy's right to bail due to violating its conditions. However, the situation itself says a lot about the attitude of the police and judges towards this man, and the threat he posed to society. Randy had repeatedly aroused suspicion even before murdering his wife. For example, neighbor Cynthia Rosenblum saw him wandering masked through the woods around the houses. She told reporters about this. According to Rosenblum and her husband, when they asked him what he was doing, Randy could barely speak. He was clearly intoxicated or under the influence of drugs. He explained his strange occupation by saying that he was supposedly walking the dogs and got lost. Before the murder in March, a case had already been opened against Randy for trespassing. This happened in Florida, but it was closed after his arrest on murder charges. No details were reported, although they could have shed light on the suspect's state of mind and motives. All these incidents testified to Randy's unbalanced behavior and propensity for violence. Despite this, until the tragedy with Rachael, there were no real consequences for the well-to-do man. 2 weeks before the start of the trial, scheduled for September 29, 2014, Randy Maidens suddenly made a deal with the prosecution. He pleaded guilty to second-degree murder with a reduction in qualification and child neglect. In return, he received only 25 years in prison. Although for second-degree murder, the maximum punishment is 60 years behind bars. Under Tennessee law, Randy, as convicted of a serious violent crime, had to serve the entire term. But the deal allowed him to count on early release for exemplary behavior and taking into account the time already served at the time of sentencing. This was stated by the defendant's own lawyer. Thus, Randy, who was 42 at the time of sentencing. Rachael's relatives, her mother Betty Frisbee and brother Brent, were shocked by such a lenient sentence, and they issued a statement expressing their outrage. There are no words or actions that could change the pain, emptiness, and sorrow that our family feels because of the brutal murder of Rachael committed by Mr. Maidens. The pain and grief that this brutal murder brought was felt not only by her family members, but also by numerous friends, colleagues, and patients, the document says. This will have the greatest impact on the lives of Natalie, Brent, and Betty. They will live with this loss every day for the rest of their lives. The total number of years the family will live without Rachael is much longer than the term this man will serve for his terrible crime. The cowardly, brutal murder of Rachael, our beautiful, extraordinary sister, daughter, and mother, has left us with an emptiness that can never be filled, Rachael's relatives emphasized. The Williamson County District Attorney's Office stated that they agreed to the deal only for the sake of little Natalie, because they understand the trial could drag on and re-traumatize the child who lost both parents. But they did not hide that the sentence, in their opinion, was too lenient for such a brutal murder. Mr. Maidens' punishment is too light compared to the cruelty of the evil he committed himself. We would like to point out that our family would not have supported a plea agreement for this senseless and terrible murder of Rachel. We agreed with the prosecution's position solely for the sake of Natalie. Betty Frisbee summarized the family's stance. However, Randy was still allowed to speak. True, his defender David Rabin read out his client's appeal, and Randy began it with words to his mother-in-law. "Betty, right now my words sound so hollow in light of your tragic loss. You have to endure the worst pain a mother can feel, and I am the reason for it. Every morning I hope to wake up from this terrible nightmare that I myself brought upon our families. You accepted me into your family, and I destroyed it. I would exchange my life for Rachel's life to return your daughter to you, and Natalie's mother to her. I understand that this is impossible and will never be fair," he said, addressing Betty. But most of his words were an appeal to his 2-year-old daughter, who was left without a mother. "Natalie, my daughter, I can never express how sorry I am that I took your mom away from you. You lost both parents, and I am to blame for everything. Know that you were the most important person in your mother's life. Forgive me for hurting you both," Randy repented. He also asked for forgiveness from his wife's brother. "Brent, I'm so sorry you lost your sister. Your pain is unimaginable," Randy admitted. And he ended his penitential speech with an appeal to Rachel. "Rachel, I promised to love and protect you, but I betrayed you instead. I will live with this pain forever. The prison I've put myself in is the worst," he pathetically summed up. How sincere this repentance was is difficult to judge. Perhaps Randy really had an epiphany and repented of what he had done. Or maybe he was just trying to make an impression and reduce his sentence. Because up until his guilty plea, the man repeatedly shifted the blame onto Rachel. Even in his suicide note, he reproached her for her bad character, as if that could be a justification for his crime. Randy's deal with the prosecution also provided for the transfer to Natalie of all the property that the couple had acquired during their marriage. The girl's guardian, who survived that terrible night, became her grandmother, Betty Frisbee. So at least the orphan's financial future was secured. With this, the shocking story of the successful doctor's murder by her own husband came to an end. Randy Maidens officially admitted his guilt and found himself behind bars, albeit not for as long a term as justice demanded. Rachel's relatives were never able to recover from her tragic death, and they did not hide their disappointment with how the justice system works in their country. They say, even if it's about the massacre of a defenseless woman, a rich and influential man still gets preferences. This story is yet another proof that even in the most civilized, most democratic, and richest country in the world, the law is sometimes too lenient on murderers, especially if they have money, connections, and clever lawyers. But the main conclusion that should be drawn from the tragedy of the Maidens family lies in a different plane, and it applies to each of us. You never know what people are hiding behind the screen of well-being. Even those who live in huge houses in elite neighborhoods and outwardly have everything can suffer from alcoholism, drug addiction, domestic violence, and even resort to murder. Therefore, one should not believe the gloss and jump to premature conclusions. Traditionally, thank you for watching, and remind you that it would be great if you support the video by liking and subscribing to the channel.